welcome back to another video in the series. This is sequence 2.5 EIGRP configuration in name mode. Now you'll notice we're not in packet tracer. Name mode could not be configured in version 8 of packet tracer. So what we have in front of us is GNS3, and for the operating systems I have subscribed to the Viral Labs and have imported the operating systems via GNS3 for those. So we now have version 15 of the operating systems which support EIGRP named. So let's go through and configure EIGRP. Now we have the ability to ping 192.168.1.1, I hope. There we go. So we have basic connectivity, and we should, in theory, be able to get to 172.16.1.1 as it's on the same device as our console. So, and ipconfig, we have our address there, so our mask, which is being pushed out via DHCP. So we have good connectivity happening in the base there. And if we flick across to router 1 and do a show IP route, or what we should have is the directly connected networks, and that's the state on every device at the moment, is just basic config of the devices. So let's get into config mode and router EIGRP. Now this is where we would normally put a number, but now we can put a name, and we'll go lab EIGRP. Alright, so now we have a little bit of a difference. We need to go address family, IPv4, unicast. Now we want to put the autonomous system number in. I'll stay consistent with what we did yesterday. We're using 100. Well, my yesterday, last video for you. And that should be that one. Now we put in the router ID, and we're on device 1, so let's make it simple. And then our network statements. So we have 10.0.12.0, and we should be using a wildcard mask. But you don't have to. You can use the subnet mask. It's one of those things that will automatically be converted for you. So whichever way you're comfortable working the system, you can do it that way. So that's the basic command structure that we're going to know. It's a little bit different. We're just laying it out. So we'll just get everybody up and running first. So rinse and repeat. Router EIGRP. Gone blank there. Now, what did I call it? Lab EIGRP. Yeah. All capitals. Okay. Underscore EIGRP. And again, you come in and you go through the same steps. The address family, IPv4, unicast, autonomous system number 100. Notice how many shortcuts I've used there. Then EIGRP, router ID, and we're on device 2. Whoop. Obviously need a little bit more on that one. Alright, so there's our D. Now our network statements are 10.0.12.0. Now I'll do it the other way because it's slightly less typing. And then 10.0.23.0 if I remember correctly. All right. So we saw there that dual notification saying adjacencies come up. So if we do the show command, show IP EIGRP, what is it? What do we want? Neighbors, topology, interfaces. Looks like we need to increase the size of this window a little bit. So the peers there, 1. So we've got a bit, and we've got a bit of a wraparound happening. All right, so off to router 3, rinse and repeat. Router 4, rinse and repeat. I'll do the magic of YouTube and come back when they're done. All right, thanks to the magic of the pause button on the record. Let's see whether we've got more routes in our routing table now that we've got the rest of it configured up. So show IP route, and see we now have some D's coming in, and you'll notice that the administrative distance is 90, and then the metric follows up, and there's our next hop and the interface we go to get there. So that looks good, and we should be able to ping our loopback on router 3, which if you look here, here's the loopback. So ping 192.168.3.1, and you can see that we're getting a nice response there. So basic config has successfully been done, and just so you can see it in a nice neat format, we'll do the show run and come down into our little routing domain. So here we are here. I'll just Alright, so here's our lovely configuration just laid out nice and neatly so that you can see how it looks in the config file, so that you can see here that we have the masks in place, and you'll notice it took the class C address back to the boundary of class C because it doesn't need a mask. Remember, the mask is optional. If you don't have it, it's on the class boundary, and that's why we don't have a subnet mask indicated on that one, in case you're wondering. So the next confirmation command we want to go through is have a look at the topology, and we'll go all links, and you can see there that we have a few of them. So here we can see that the 13 network can be connected to via 2 distances. Same with the 10. So you'll notice that they didn't populate in. Remember that the reported distance has to be shorter than the feasible distance to be considered, and they've got to be equal cost under default settings. So next up, we'll be looking at passive interfaces. So alright, so router 1 is a good example for a passive interface. We have a network that only has end devices on it, so there's no need to send routing updates down to that network, and that's VLAN 2, which is going to be gigabit 01.2. So let's jump in to get this. So we want to go back into router, EIGRP, and the name of the instance, and we need to go through the address, unicast auto 100, and the last time I checked, address is AT, isn't it? Okay, so we're now in the correct autonomous system under EIGRP. So we want to go to the interface, and it is G0:1.2 for VLAN 2, and we want to make it passive interface. Enter. And guess what? That's as hard as it gets. Alright. Do you copy, run, start, folks? It's made changes. So the other way you could do it is to go through and make them defaults. So we'll go up into router 2, again global config, and go into the router EIGRP, and it's lab_EIGRP, and again address family IPv4 unicast autonomous system 100, and This time it's IF interface default. So we're making it a default, and we're going to make it passive interface by default. And all of our neighbors have just been lost due to the fact that we're now a passive interface. So we need to go into our interfaces and do the no passive interface command under each of our interfaces to get them to come back up. So that's how it works. So if you've got a lot of end device facing interfaces, it's good to have the passive interface command on the default, and then just come in and open up the interfaces that you want for communicating to other routers. So again, save your config, and how do we check which interfaces are passive, which one's not? So the other way of doing it, we'll jump across to router 3. The loopback interface needs to be passive. So what's the command again? Global config. Go into router EIGRP, lab EIGRP, and we want to address the family, which is IPv4 unicast autonomous system 100. And again, we want to make a passive interface. Now for me, I only want the loopback 0 to be passive, so I'm just going to go in there and make that passive. Alright, now end that, and if we do a show IP protocols and do the old section passive on it, did it not accept pass as passive? Three. There's all my networks, and the passive interface is there. Okay. Had me worried there for a second. Alright, so the next one is the authentication, which we'll set up between router 3 and router 2, just like we did in 2.4 video for the classic mode. So again, and you wouldn't be jumping in and out. You'd do all of this together. You would know which interfaces you were going to make passive. You would know whether you're going to use authentication, so you wouldn't be needing to jump in and out of the configuration all the time, like I've been doing. And that way you wouldn't have to keep typing in the address family IPv4 unicast autonomous system 100, because you do it all at once in that. So just to save you some time. So AF interface, it's going to be 00 facing router 2, and the commands on the interface is IP authentication, which I forgot to make the keychains, so I'm going to have to step back a few steps and make the keychain first. Let's do it in the right order. So this is EIGRP key, and we'll make it key 1, and we'll put the key string as my key 123. Alright, so next we go to the interface. Folks, the interface, not the router. If you're in Classic, but under named, you go to that lovely router command. So if I just up arrow to that, do the auto, and then AF interface G00, and then we can put the authentication keychain, and the name of my key was EIGRP key. And my authentication mode is MD5. There goes our neighborhood because it can't authenticate. Jump across the router 2, go in the config T, keychain first. What's that? Keychain? Name of the keychain? EIGRP key. Key's got to be the same number, and key string needs to be the same. So it was my key 123. And now we want to go into router EIGRP lib EIGRP, and we want to go to the address family of IPv4 unicast autonomous system 100. And we want to go to the interface affected, which is G01, and we want to put in authentication keychain EIGRP key, and we want to make it MD5 and end. And we have a new adjacency. So I've got my key string right and my key right. Now we have the authentication up and running again. Save the changes. And if we have a look at the show IP EIGRP interface detail, if I can spell correctly. Now it should be under section G01. Obviously doesn't like my sectioning commands. So there's 00, no authentication, and 01 facing router 3, we have authentication mode details. And that pretty much takes us back to the variance command, which, strangely enough, is a little different here, but does it really matter that much? No, it doesn't. So just for consistency with what we've done on the other bits, we'll go into router EIGRP and it's AD100, and this time we're going topology base, and here you put your variance and the value in. That's it. That's as complex as it gets. So now if we do a show IP route, we've got no duplicates required. So whereas if we did down here, we'd have the two routes put in, but that's the commands. So this has been the name mode configuration for EIGRP, and just so you can see the let's see if it begin on router. Alright, so here's router EIGR lab, address family. We have a default passive interface and then no passive interface for our G00. G01, no passive, and we have our authentication set up. There's our variance set up under topology base, and then the network statements and our router ID. So it's a little bit more involved when we set it up, but it's done all in the one place under that router EIGRP section. Alright, thanks for joining. Hope you found it useful, and until next time, you have a good day.